for another episode of 28 Days of Color by S.T.E.A.M Engine Academy. Today is episode 19, Color in Real Estate. We'll speak with Stephen Walton, a real estate investor, and discuss the history of the Civil War, another fight for property and land.
On April 12, 1861, the first attacks on Fort Sumter would start what we know as the American Civil War. But for 4 million African Americans living in the country, this war would be seen as something entirely different. This would be the first time where African Americans would be fighting for their freedoms. There are many causes for what caused the Civil War. There are many reasons for what caused the Civil War. But for blacks, it can come down to one reason really. And that would be slavery. At the time of his election, Abraham Lincoln was viewed by many Democratic leaders as an abolitionist who wanted to end slavery. This was bad for many southern states as their economies relied heavily on slave labor. In comparison, in the North was very much industrialized, so there was not as much of a need for slave labor. A lot of southern states were using slaves to drive their economies. On Lincoln's part, he himself assured those states that once elected, he would not take away their slaves, nor would he end slavery. Abraham Lincoln was much more focused on preservation of the Union, and what this meant was that Abraham Lincoln decided on whether or not slavery was wrong or right. His entire goal was to preserve the Union. So if there were states who wanted to own their slaves, they would allow them to, and it would not be a problem. So for him, it was a matter of the preservation of the Union. It wasn't really about slavery in the beginning. Despite this, on December 20th, 1860, South Carolina became the first state to secede from the Union, quoting slavery as a reason for its secession. Several other states, including Texas, Arkansas, Virginia, and Alabama, declared slavery as being the reason for their secession. So when the matter of states' rights come up, and the issue of states' rights come up in discussion of Civil War, and what that means for many states, it was the state's right to own slaves. The discussion of slaves would also be further agitated as Missouri, along with Maine, would join the Union and would be declared as both slave and free state. The addition of states into the Union was a big issue, because as the Union grew, states could decide and vote on whether or not they wanted to be free or slave states. There were states that were above the Mason-Dixon line that would vote for slavery, and there were states that were against slavery. It wouldn't be until 2 years after the war started that African Americans would participate in the war. Abolitionists such as Frederick Douglass would encourage the president to allow black troops to serve, and would encourage blacks to serve as well. He would even have 2 of his own sons enlist in the 54th Regiment. Frederick Douglass would also encourage blacks to fight as well, seeing this as a path to full citizenship, because at this time African Americans were not seen as full citizens in the United States. So the first part of African Americans and blacks getting their freedom would come in the Second Confiscation Act of 1862. This act would not only free those who had masters in the Confederate Army, but it was also meant to employ as many persons of African descent as he may deem necessary and proper to the suppression of this rebellion in such a manner as he may judge best for the public welfare. So what the Second Confiscation Act of 1862 did is that any African American who was enslaved by a Confederate was now declared free. Not only that, but they could also take up arms to suppress this rebellion. And how blacks took it and how African Americans took it is that it was our first chance to be able to rally and to form our own regiments and to form our own battalions to fight back against the Confederacy. This, many blacks took it as a call to arms and formed their own volunteer regiments. By the end of the war, 6 volunteer regiments had been formed. the 5th Regiment of Massachusetts Colored Volunteer Cavalry, the 54th and 55th Massachusetts Volunteer Infantry Regiment, the 29th and 30th Connecticut Volunteer Infantry Regiment, and the 31st Infantry Regiment. There was also the Corps d'Afrique in Louisiana. The first unit to see combat would be the 1st Kansas Colored Infantry Regiment at the Battle of Poison Spring. Several African American women played key roles in aiding in the North's victory. Despite many of them being relegated to nursing jobs, women such as Betsy Young and Sarah Kino, while others such as Anne Bradford Stokes became the first African American woman to join the Navy and to board a U.S. Navy vessel. The bravery of women such as Sojourner Truth and Harriet Tubman saved the lives of many black soldiers. Although there were several regiments of Northern troops fighting, in the South there were very little African American troops and regiments that even fought or participated in the war, and those who did, most were relegated to second-hand jobs such as cooks or to being laundrymen. Those that were freed were oftentimes never actually even saw combat. Those who were enslaved were oftentimes bought by their masters to assist them in the war. There were also those who were able to escape and make their way to Northern Territory, and several of them would be deemed as contraband of war and would be used as spies to infiltrate the southern regions. The need for more troops and looking for an end to the war and a noble cause, President Lincoln signed the Emancipation Proclamation in 1863, freeing enslaved blacks in Confederate states. Black soldiers participated in several battles in Virginia, Massachusetts, and Louisiana, and by the end of the war, 180,000 men had been recruited, and of this, 26 black men had received the Medal of Honor, with Sergeant William Carney being the first black person to receive this award. After 5 long years of battling, the South was finally defeated at the Battle of Palmito Ranch on May 9th, 1865. So what's important for us to understand about the Civil War is that for the 44 million African Americans who had been living in the country at the time, not only had we not been recognized as citizens of the United States, but over 3/4 of us were enslaved people. So this war was not just a civil war, but it was the first battle that African Americans fought for their freedom in this country. And it's the first time where we were able to take hands and take control of our destiny and fight for our freedom. So, although we call it the Civil War, we can also see it as the first battle of African American liberation in the United States.
Welcome back to another episode of 28 Days of Color. Today's topic is color in real estate. We're here with Stephen Walton, one of the board of directors for our partners, Playbook Series, Inc. How are you, Stephen?
Great, and how are you?
Good. I appreciate you being here. Glad to have you on the show.
Thank you for having me.
So I want to get into a little bit of what you do. So tell me how long you've been in real estate and what inspired you to pursue that industry.
Well, it was my oldest brother, Richard Walton. He really inspired me. He was the one that gave me the idea. Real estate ownership is independence. So with that, I looked for the best way to get into it, and finding out as much as I could about it, I learned that investors actually got to keep as much profit as they could cut out for themselves, as opposed to a real estate mortgage broker or salesperson who have to split 6%. So I decided to go into the investing arm.
Oh, very nice. And what do you feel is the most important thing about owning that real estate? You mentioned independence.
Yes, independence and freedom to do as you choose. One, it gives you a pride of ownership, first and foremost. Number two, it gives you capital, investing capital to be able to build even more wealth. I learned just recently that my great grandfather in South Georgia actually owned 20 acres of land. And I found out that he owned this land, what was it, early 1901, 1902. So that's like 40 years out of slavery. But he was in the heart of slave territory, and he owned 20 acres of land. He built each one of his daughters a house. And with that, I'm sad to say my family owns 1/3 of that acre right now, 1/3 of an acre out of 20 acres.
What happened to the other acres?
From my understanding, the daughters sold their land as fast as they got it, thinking that the money was more valuable than the land. And the money comes out of the land. And if we're not taught those principles, then we squander the money as fast as we get the land.
Right.
And that's what happened. So my goal is to try my best to reacquire that 20 acres plus another 20 acres and possibly even a Bentley.
A mule.
Yeah. Yeah, that was a, pun intended.
Right.
Yeah.
And, what are some challenges you've had personally in getting into real estate investing? What are some barriers that you think might have been connected to discrimination?
That's funny that you asked. The very first property that I bought, it was, I had a white real estate agent. I hate to say, and he told me there was no way I could buy this property, even though I knew the owners, and they had told me I had already had the loan, and I told him I wanted this property. He told me there's no way you can get this property. I tried to buy in this area and I couldn't. It was right before Christmas, and he told me he was going on break on Christmas vacation, and he'll see me when he got back. So what I did, honestly, was found another real estate agent while he was gone. And it was a minority real estate agent. And within 3 days, we closed on the house. Christmas Eve, we were, celebrating the closing.
Wow.
Yeah. So that was the very first challenge. And I've had several since then.
Wow. Right out the gate. I mean, we can't even get a little, okay. And, you've been in this for a few years now, a couple of decades from the 90s. And so what have you done since then as you go along to kind of, push past these hurdles?
One, you make friendships. You talk to as many people as you can and find out who's on your team and who's not. And you work with those people, and the people that you see are going to be, adversarial. You keep them out of your way.
Yeah.
You avoid those people, and you deal with the people that, works best for you. Now, sometimes you can't, avoid dealing with adversaries. So, how do you say? You kill them with kindness.
Mm-hmm.
You kill them with kindness. And what I try to do is let my light shine. And you can always, every time you meet an adversary, you have an opportunity to make that adversary a friend.
Right.
So, and that's my, that's the way I look at it.
Right. And I feel like that's very diplomatic. We don't have to necessarily mirror the same way we're being responded to. We don't have to, take on that same anger, that same discriminatory attitude. And I think it speaks a lot to your character that you rise above. And I think that shows in your success. So I think that is awesome. And I commend you, because it takes a lot of patience, and we deal with it every day. And
every day.
And with that, even as a Black community, what can we do knowing what you know now, how would you advise us to get more involved in real estate and real estate investing?
One of the key things, honestly, Lauren, I think is platforms like this that one show and teach. When I first started, I didn't have these platforms. Like I told you, I literally started watching late night infomercials and buying late night infomercials, which actually led me into buying my first property, which I bought. The day I walked in, I had $35,000 worth of equity. And when I sold the property, I doubled my money, honestly, because of the way I bought the property. And since then, there's been quite a few properties that I buy. I realized that when you buy property, you make money when you buy the property, not when you sell it. And the way we can help, going back to your original question, honestly, is by teaching. And this platform is an excellent avenue for that.
Thank you. I appreciate you saying that. We want to educate. We want them to know that there are people out here like us that are doing this. It is possible, and putting someone in front of them like yourself so they can see for themselves. So.
Thank you, and you as well.
And with all the things that you've done, what are some of the achievements? You've passed all these hurdles, you've pushed past negative people, and you're still successful. What are you proud of in particular that you've done?
Honestly, my achievements goes past the real estate. It goes past the financial. It goes directly into being able to take care of my family, being able to leave a legacy for them and to pass something on to them. The mistakes that we make is not teaching our kids and our grandkids what to do with what we leave them. Right. And it starts the day that they get here. It starts the day that you start to teach them, if that makes sense.
It does.
Yeah, it starts from the beginning. I've seen so many parents, literally, I have so many friends that their parents left them what I would consider, especially what I come from, their parents left them empires. And in less than a generation, they're gone. And I go, what? How do you leave a kid, a grown man, 6, 7 houses fully paid for, and within 10 years they're gone? I go, wow. How do you leave your kids 20 acres and within a generation it's gone? Those are the things we need to teach our kids: financial independence, financial literacy. And those are the things we're not doing. So thank you for having this platform.
Well, let's give them some more of that information. What are some of those key conversations that we need to have?
Well, exactly what is finance and what does it mean to finance something? How does interest rates affect the actual cost of an item?
Right.
Because if you're buying a car that's $7,000, but the interest rate is 21% over 4 years, that car is not $7,000. And we need to know that. And those are the things that actually affect the Black community the most.
So because we're, kind of seeing the beginning of that payment, saying, oh, this is just $7,000, that is in my range, but looking more at the long term is important, right? You want us to see kind of what's at the end of the road rather than just on the beginning?
Yes, because $7,000, say, spread out with a 21% interest rate over 4 years. Don't get me wrong, I'm not a math whiz, but I think that comes out somewhere close to about $20,000.
Right.
Very close to $20,000. So as you can see, that $7,000 car is nowhere close to $7,000. It may be in your monthly payment range, but how is it going to affect your bottom line?
And had we had knowledge of that, you were mentioning the people in your past, in your history, getting rid of that 20 acres, perhaps if they'd known ahead of time what that could have done for them, and they had that education earlier, they would have understood, those families who are having things left to them to support them in years to come. Managing that would be a lot easier if we knew how these things work.
Right, but that's part of the redlining system, and the disenfranchisement of Black folks through the system. Whereas when the government handed out these land grants, to the white farm grants, land grants that they gave out in the 20s and the 30s, they were giving all these farmers these land grants. Not only were they giving them that, they were also giving them grants to go to school for free, to educate them on how to use this land, you know what I mean? And how to use the wealth that they were going to create through farming. That's why a lot of those farmers, a lot of, what do you say, European farmers, European American farmers became so wealthy, or allowed their families to live as well as they did. And Black farming kind of fell off. That's why there's so few Black farmers today.
Thank you so much for being here. I've appreciated being able to sit down with you and share a lot of this information. And before we go, I just want to ask you, is there anything else you'd like to share or leave our audience with before we go?
Yes, one thing. Real estate ownership equals financial independence. And I hope that all Black folks, all minorities would have some share of home ownership, because it is financial independence.
That's what we need. Thank you for being here, Stephen. And I appreciate all this information. And we may have to tap back into some more of that later on so we can have some more to share with our students.
Thank you very much. Thank you for having me.
Take care.
Bye-bye.
Closing an episode today with another Grace story. We're going to read Boundless Grace, written again by Mary Hoffman and illustrated by Carolyn Bench. Find out what happens when Grace gets to go back and meet her father in Africa and the experience she has when she gets there. Boundless Grace. Grace lived with her ma and her nana and a cat called Pawpaw. Next to her family, what Grace liked best was stories. Some she knew and some she made up. She was particularly interested in the ones about fathers, because she didn't have one. You do too have a father, her ma said, when she caught Grace talking that way. I must have told you 100 times about how we split up and your papa went back to Africa. He has another family now, but he's still your father, even though he doesn't live with us anymore. Well, that wasn't Grace's idea of a father. She wanted one like Beauty's, who brought her roses from the beast's garden in spite of the dangers. Not one she hadn't seen since she was very little and only knew from letters and photographs. And in her school reading books, Grace saw that all the families had a mother and a father, a boy and a girl, and a dog and a cat. Our family's not right, she told Nana. We need a father and a brother and a dog. Well, said Nana, I'm not sure how Pawpaw would feel about a dog. And what about me? Are there any nanas in your school books? Grace shook her head. Do I have to go then? Asked Nana. Of course not, said Grace, hugging her. Nana hugged her back. A family with you in it is a real family, she said. Families are what you make them. Then one day when Grace got home from school, she saw a letter on the table with a crocodile stamp on it. She knew it must be from Papa, But it wasn't Christmas or her birthday. Guess what? Ma said. Your papa sent money for 2 tickets to visit him in Africa for your spring vacation. Nana says she'll go with you if you want. What do you say? But Grace was speechless. She'd made up so many fathers for herself, she'd forgotten what the real one was like. Grace and Nana left for Africa on a very cold gray day. They arrived in the Gambia in golden sunshine like the hottest summer back home. It had been a long, long trip. Grace barely noticed the strange sights and sounds that greeted her. She was thinking of Papa. I wonder if Papa will still love me, thought Grace. He has other children now, and in stories, it's always the youngest that is the favorite. She held on tightly to Nana. Outside the airport was a man who looked a little like Papa's photo. He swung Grace up in his arms and held her close. Grace buried her nose in his shirt and thought, I do remember. In the car, she started to notice how different everything seemed. There were sheep wandering along the roadside and people selling watermelons under the trees. And when they reached her father's compound, there was the biggest difference of all. A pretty young woman with a little girl and a baby boy came to meet them. Grace said hello, but couldn't manage another word all evening. Everyone thought she was just tired, except Nana. What's the matter, honey? She asked when they went to bed. You've got a father and a brother now, and they even have a dog. But Grace thought, they make a storybook family without me. I'm one girl too many. Besides, it's the wrong ma. The next day, Grace started to get to know Nana and Bakari. The children thought it was wonderful to have a big sister all the way from America, and Grace couldn't help liking them too. But she had to feel cross with someone. Grace knew lots of stories about wicked stepmothers, Cinderella, Snow White, Hansel and Gretel, so she decided to be cross with Jatu. I won't clean the house for her, thought Grace. I won't eat anything she cooks, and I won't let her take me into the forest. Jatu made a big dish of savory Benetchin for lunch, but Grace wouldn't eat any. I'm not hungry, she said. She's probably still getting over the long flight, said Jatu. When Papa came home from work, he found Grace in the backyard. He sat beside her under the big old jackfruit tree. This is where my grandma used to tell me stories when I was a little boy, he said. Nana tells me stories too, said Grace. Did she ever tell you the one about how your ma and I came to split up? Asked Papa. I know that one, said Grace, but I don't want to hear it right now, and she covered her ears. Papa hugged her. Would you like the one about the papa who loved his little girl so much he saved up all his money to bring her to visit him? Yes, I'd like that one, said Grace. Okay, but if I tell you a story, will you promise to try to be nice to Jatu? You're both very important to me, said Papa. Grace thought about it. I'll try, she said. The next day they went to the market. It was more exciting than shopping at home. Even the money had crocodiles on it. Lots of the women carried their shopping on their head. Then they went to a stall that was like stepping inside a rainbow. There was cloth with crocodiles and elephants on it, and cloth with patterns made from pebbles and shells, and so many colors. We can choose cloth for Grace's first African dress, said Papa. Grace and Nana spent a long time choosing. No one was in a hurry. The day of Grace's visit flew by. She played in the ocean with her brother and sister, and she told them a bedtime story every night. She told all the stories she knew, Beauty and the Beast, Rapunzel, Rumpelstiltskin. It was amazing how many stories were about fathers who gave their daughters away, but she didn't tell them any about wicked stepmothers. Sometimes Ma called from home, and her voice made Grace feel homesick. I feel like gum, stretched out all thin in a bubble, she told Nana. As if there isn't enough of me to go around. I can't manage 2 families. What if I burst? Seems to me there is enough of you, Grace, said Nana. Plenty to go around. And remember, families are what you make them. Soon it was their last evening, and there was a big farewell party at the compound. Grace and Nana wore their African clothes, and Grace ate twice as much Benachin as everyone else. "Now you really might burst," said Nana. On their last morning, Papa took Grace to see some real crocodiles. "This is a special holy place," he said. "The crocodiles are so tame you can stroke them." "Not like the one in Peter Pan," said Grace. "No, these are so special you can make a wish on them," said Papa. Grace closed her eyes and made a wish, but she wouldn't say what it was. Later at the compound, Grace asked Nana, "Why aren't there any stories about families like mine that don't live together?" "Well, at least you've stopped thinking it's your family that's wrong," said Nana. "Now until we get back home and find some books about families like yours, you'll just have to make up a new story of your own." "I'll do that," said Grace. "And when we're home again, I'll write it down and send it to Jatu to read to Nana and Bakari." The whole family came to see them off at the airport. Grace was sorry to say goodbye to her new brother and sister, and even to her stepmother, but leaving Papa was hardest of all. Waiting for their plane, Nana asked Grace if she had thought any more about her story. "Yes, but I can't think of the right ending," said Grace, "because the story's still going on." "How about they lived happily ever after?" asked Nana. "That's a good one," said Grace. "Or they lived happily ever after, though not all in the same place." "Stories are what you make them," said Nana. "Just like families," said Grace. The end.
Mas não. Mas não. Mas não. Havia. Espesso. Havia. Espesso. Mas não vou sem te chamar na viagem.